Becker's here. Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm just going to have to give one message to the people up in the booth because we're just switching the order of the program a little bit. We're going to start with the Ibo Balton Award. We're then going to ask Bill Stallworth to speak, and then we're going to have Mayor Booker give the keynote, and we'll do the other two awards after Mayor Booker because he has a time constraint, and we'd like to try to accommodate him because we'd like him to come back again and know that we won't, waste his time. So I really appreciate that you came, and I also am really excited to be back in the public eye because if you'll excuse me for one moment, something I've really missed since I left being housing commissioner. It's moving the 2 reams of paper that I bring with me to stand behind the podium. Thank you. It's been like almost 3 years since I've had to stand on reams of paper. Since I came to CHPC, I've made a few changes that I want you to be aware of. The first is that the seats in the back tables are actually now rigged with just small electronic charges so that if you are speaking, I can operate that from the stage. But the other is that we're actually filming this event, and as the forum that we did on green building finance, we'll have it on our website in case you want to relive it over and over again. And we've only been able to do this because of our fantastic staff, who I'd really like to thank, people up in the booth and people that, got your labels or filled them out. And I want to particularly explain the division of labor between myself and Harold Schultz. If you're happy with your seating, then that was me that you can thank for that. And if you're seated at the wrong table or with people you don't like, then Harold is in charge of our complaint department, which will be open tomorrow at 9. And in particular, we want to really thank the people who are our sponsors, who are Phipps Houses, CPC, JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Richmond Housing Resources, Wachovia, Goldman Sachs, and Kramer Levin. And our organization was created 70 years ago. So I hope you got the little bit of the Depression-era theme that we tried to sprinkle in. And in 1937, New York was quite a different place. In the movies, the theaters were playing the Marx Brothers' latest movie and films starring Mary Pickford and Ginger Rogers. Unemployment was rampant and housing conditions were often horrific. And CHPC's first chairman stated our goals this way. This organization represents an effort to find a newer and perhaps more practical approach to the city's problems of low-rent housing and slum rehabilitation, promising to bring a team of experts together in committees to then report to their recommendations at a conference 6 months later. A few months later, Mayor LaGuardia would note derisively in the New York Times, if conferences were houses, the underprivileged would live in palaces. So 70 years later, the movies have different stars and housing conditions have greatly improved in our city. And New York's housing programs have been the most aggressive, successful, and far-reaching in the country. And yet, that search to find newer and more practical solutions and the frustration to stop talking and just get something done is still with us today. And that's been where CHP's work has been at its best, offering practical programs to create economically and racially integrated public housing, to saving the in-rem stock, rethinking the effects of gentrification, examining ways to preserve our older rental housing, and looking ahead to finance green building construction and ensuring that along with an environmentally sustainable city, we have a sustainable regulatory infrastructure. And so while we think and explore about this future, let's not forget that there are things we can do right now to improve our communities. Every person who comes up to the microphone today has dedicated themselves to changing the way things are, to transforming that three-dimensional world out there through their work, a world that can enrich people's lives or bury their ambitions, a world that can offer a vision of hope or one that leads to a dead end. So I hope you'll listen to what they say. Like you, they care about the people who are unable to find decent housing without help. And like you, they believe that by changing communities, you can change people's lives. And like you, they are working hard every day so that kids can play outside, go to school to learn, so that families can go to work, and everyone can come home to a place that provides comfort, safety, and a chance to dream. We're going to start with Ibo Balton's award. So I'd like to first introduce my friend Lucille McEwen. This past year, we lost somebody who was very important to us in the housing community, and that was Ibo Balton. And when we lost Ibo, we lost one of the city's best planners, one of the housing department's most effective innovators, one of Harlem's most loyal sons, and for many of us who worked with Ibo, we lost a smile, a voice, and a friend. CHPC board member Lucille McEwen, who is CEO and president of Harlem Congregations for Community Improvement, along with the generosity of CHPC board member Ron Molis, who I would ask to just come up if he could, and Robert Ezrapour, if you could just come up as well. We'd like to first have Lucille introduce our first recipient of the Ibo Balton Community Planner Award.
When Ibo passed, Geraldine and I talked about how would we make sure that his name was remembered in the affordable housing community. And we thought that an award at this luncheon would be very appropriate, both to inspire planners who work for government or nonprofits and have a very difficult job of often working on community interests while executing government actions. And so Mike Polo is truly deserving. Mike Polo currently serves as the Director of Queens and Staten Island Planning for the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. He is responsible for planning for the development of future affordable housing. Michael's thoughtful and insightful work has helped to increase the supply of affordable housing while incorporating and respecting community issues. As a project manager, Michael worked for 8 years with Ibo, where they together provided a bridge between community concerns and government actions. Michael's work in Clinton and Harlem represents some of the best examples of government and communities working together towards a common purpose. Mike grew up in public housing in New York City, received his BA from Columbia, and an MPA from the City University of New York, Baruch College, also my alma mater for my MBA. And Mike, I am presenting this award. Where's Mike? Come on down, Mike. Mike, we are presenting this award to you today because you represent all that Ibo loved about community planning and development. And because we know you've got your work cut out for you with the mayor's announcement of the Willets Point Development Plan.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. CHPC, thank you so much for instituting this award and doing such a great honor to Ibo's memory. Ibo stood for rebuilding neighborhoods, but he also stood for restoring the existing community, for bringing a new standard of public and private service to the neighborhood, and in his most exalted vision for recapturing the glories of the Harlem Renaissance. On several occasions, Ibo and I would have that conversation, the one where we would talk about being hopelessly smitten with New York City and Harlem and the neighborhoods that we loved and the ones we worked in. And we talked about the joys and the indignities of living in New York City, and we talked about where our respective careers might ultimately lead us, because after all, we couldn't stay at this job forever. But after weighing it all, we always arrived at the same place, knowing that we couldn't leave this job just yet, after all, how could we walk away from the historic opportunity to play such a critical role in the restoration and rebirth of Harlem and East Harlem and the other distressed communities in Manhattan. And after all, it was both the glory and the tragedy of Ibo's life that he stayed at that job until he passed. When Geraldine called to let me know that I had won this award, I immediately demanded a recount. And the words of one Lloyd Benson came to mind. Geraldine, and I'll paraphrase that, Geraldine, I served with Ibo Balton, and I knew Ibo Balton. Ibo Balton was a friend of mine, and I'm no Ibo Balton yet, but I am a proud member of a community of those committed to this important public service we do. And I accept this on behalf of a community of HPD public servants, past and present, and of course all our partners who are also responsible. And I thank you so much for this honor and wish you well. Thank you again.